Live from Vancouver, Canada, we're back for broadcast number 6. That's right, it's Bvtw back with this week's celebrity news. It's your boy Blue here, your host for tonight. In the spirit of the Olympics, let's start off with some sports stories this week. First up, some golf. Is it a sport? Maybe, maybe not. Nobody knows. Former golfer Mark Lye has found himself in a rough situation after insulting the WNBA. He was watching some highlights and said that he'd rather shoot himself than watch more. I get it. Not all sports can be as thrilling, entertaining, and action-packed as people taking a 3-hour hike and occasionally hitting a ball. And of course, the best part, listening to the commentators whisper to each other so they don't scare the athletes. Maybe he has a point, though. I'd whip out my gun, too. And by that I mean I want to shoot my wood on the back half of Skylar Diggins-Smith. Would you believe it? We've got another golf story in the news, this time about Bachelor Matt James. Turns out he hit a shot so bad it went into the crowd and hit a cameraman. When interviewed after, he laughed and said, "I haven't drilled someone that hard since we filmed The Bachelor." He may not be good with a driver, but you should see his wood game. On his first shot, he actually missed the ball completely. On the second one, it's where he hit the man because it didn't quite get high enough off the ground. A source from The Bachelor tells me this wasn't the only time he had problems getting it up. You know, I always kind of figured that these Bachelor guys had no control over their balls. Continuing in sports, kind of. Strange story in the world of rap as DaBaby got in a fight with Danileigh's brother, Brandon Bills, at a bowling alley. Now that takes some balls. What size though? Who knows? I could never figure out which one to use. But don't get caught fooling around with somebody else's balls, I can tell you that much. No word yet on who threw the first strike. But after the fight, DaBaby made sure he was the first to split. When asked why the fight happened, DaBaby said, and that he should have just stayed in his lane. Apparently, the bowling alley took action after the incident and said that DaBaby is permanently banned from the alley. Terrible news. Where is he going to have his birthday party now? I feel like there are probably some more jokes in here somewhere. I don't know. Anyone got another one they can spare? We're not done with sports yet, folks. Terrible story out of the Olympics as one of the athletes shared pictures of some food that she was getting in quarantine. She said it's so bad that after being served it for 5 days, she's in pain, exhausted, and lost so much weight that her bones are showing. Some of the figure skaters heard about the whole situation and were furious. They said, "Hey, wait a minute, you guys are getting fed?" But this is what the Olympics is all about. We learn about different cultures and see everyone come together. Now there's mothers in Africa saying, "Kids, you better eat all your food. There's Olympians in China right now who would do anything to eat your stew." And now over to some boxing. Floyd "Money" Mayweather, one of the greatest boxers in history, was in the news last week after his bodyguard was accused of battery. Yeah, out of the two of them, only one has knocked someone out in the past 10 years. Interestingly, witnesses say that he may not have actually hit the guy, but that he flopped. I, for one, am shocked. Mayweather possibly involved in a fake fight? I just don't believe it. Never. And of course, it wouldn't be Bvtw if we didn't have some NFL news on here. By the way, I only cover maybe a third of all the NFL crime I see. I'm not even joking. There's so much that I just picked the best ones. This time, it's former offensive lineman Greg Robinson, who was arrested after possessing an absurd $120,000 worth of drugs. Sources tell me that that's one of the most impressive possessions in NFL history. I'm not a football guy, but I'm sure we'll be seeing that in the top 10 countdowns for decades. At the scene, they found the drugs thanks to those drug-sniffing dogs. Of course, they're trained to sit down if they catch any kind of a whiff of drugs. In this case, they got within 2 feet of his car and said, "Bruh, I think I'm high. Why don't I have any thumbs?"
Bruh.
He was, of course, arrested and charged with a lot of things, including possession with intent to distribute cocaine and crack cocaine. Why have one when you can have them both? But don't worry about those. He cleared up the whole situation. He told police that that's just the retirement gift you get from the NFL. This actually wasn't the first time he was caught with a lot of drugs. A couple years ago, he was actually caught with 157 pounds of weed in his car. But that was fine, again, because they were in Florida and because he's, of course, an offensive lineman who weighs 330 pounds, he could claim that as personal use. Hey Loki, I heard you did some work as a drug-sniffing dog yourself. Why'd you stop? Looks like he got into those pills again. Anyway, keeping on that worldwide Olympic kind of theme, let's talk about some politics. We've got a bit of a scandalous story this week in Oregon as the leading candidate for governor admitted that him and his wife are in a Facebook group where they explored relationships with other couples. He said, "It's not what you think. We were just campaigning. You gotta get those votes." He's running on the campaign promise that everyone who votes gets a lap dance from both him and his wife. I've heard his poll position is looking great. He's campaigning as a Republican candidate, but said that he swings both ways. In other political news, Putin was back this week for asserting his dominance over the French. No, he's not invading France or anything. The two presidents just had a conversation at a table the size of Putin's support group in his last election. Totally not rigged. People thought it was to send a message to Macron, but he said, nah. Size doesn't matter. But if it did, mine's the biggest. Putin opened up by talking, of course, about the Ukraine. He asked what France's position was on the whole conflict. Macron replied by saying, "What? Sorry, I can't hear you from over here." At one point, Macron could feel that maybe the two countries weren't getting close to any kind of deal. He said, I think there's just too much distance between our two sides here. In the end, they didn't quite finish their negotiations. Instead, their discussion was tabled for next week. Speaking of Russia, a Russian teenager has been sent to prison for 5 years for a plot to blow up a government building in Minecraft. I don't know why they're so upset. All they gotta do is reload their save. It takes like 10 seconds. Apparently, they found him guilty of training for terrorist activities. Wait until they hear about all those kids playing Call of Duty. They were actually originally charged with participating in a terrorist organization, but there wasn't enough proof to convict them. I think I know which group it was, though. Gotta watch out for them. Next, we've got an update on one of last week's stories, which means it's Bvtw, the rematch. Last week we talked about Angelina from the Jersey Shore who had talked to a pet psychic and ended up questioning her whole marriage. I made a joke about the husband questioning the marriage after hearing about the pet psychic. Turns out I was right. He actually ended up filing for divorce. He said, "Angelina, I've talked to the pet psychic myself about your and it's just not gonna work out."
Denied.
Next up, we have my personal favorite segment, the one that keeps the show going. It's This Week in Florida. This week in Florida, we might have one of the most Florida stories yet, as it turns out a 12-year-old outsmarted police and framed another girl with a fake bomb threat. Say what you want, but they're teaching them well down there. Only 12? I'd be proud if I was her parents. Most people can't outsmart the police until they're at least 15. It is Florida though, so I don't know, maybe there's an unfair advantage. A few months ago, the Florida police arrested and put handcuffs on a 13-year-old girl for the bomb threat. Yeah, you heard me, folks. Handcuffs. I don't know about you, but I see a little girl in a pink tracksuit and I go running the other way. You never know what's gonna go down. Is she gonna sell me cookies or is she gonna empty the clip? I don't know. You just never know. It turns out the 12-year-old who was behind the whole thing had set up a Finsta, a fake Insta for all the ancient folks over 20 out there, and used multiple fake email accounts to send threatening messages. I guess when she was isolating in the pandemic last year, she was really hitting up those Netflix crime docs, maybe even watching some Pretty Little Liars. A would be jealous, that's all I'm saying. Also this week in Florida, parents were arrested for locking their adopted son in the garage for 5 years. He was only given a mattress and a bucket for a toilet. Before anyone gets upset though, in Florida, that's a 5-star Airbnb, folks. It doesn't get any better than that. Interestingly, there were 3 other kids in the house. When interviewed about the other kid, one of them said, "I've never seen this man before in my life." The police stated that the room would lock and the lights were controlled from the outside of the room. Now that's pretty bad, but the real crime here is that he was stuck in Florida. In the end, they were charged with aggravated child abuse and false imprisonment. They're going to contest that, though, by arguing they were just quarantining. You gotta be safe. Can't be too careful. They're so safety conscious, they started quarantining all the way back in 2017. The government should be proud. Give these people an award. No word yet on the kid's name, but I think we all know who it is. That brings us to the end of the broadcast this week. If you've got any new stories you want me to cover for next week, shoot me a message or leave a comment below. Of course, this show makes fun of everyone, so I want everyone else to do the same. Leave your jokes in the comments below, down in the war zone. Put your own jokes about what I've talked about today, or even make some jokes about me. If I like what you've done, you might see your post on Twitter, Insta, or maybe even a video in the future. But that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And remember, stay true to you. Stay blue.